Welcome to Dead Air Live. Out there, folks, we are all dead right here, but we are alive, as you might know, if you catch my drift. I gotta say something to you, though. I was thinking that we can present to you something really spooky. Oh, excuse me, I got a dry throat. Well, let's introduce tonight's show. It's called, I think senior citizen moments are coming into me. I'm so old, I've been dead so long that I forget what I'm trying to say. But it doesn't matter. We're gonna go to see some wacky tapes that we have from our archives that we had from a long time ago. You know what I mean? I get them dry. Hold on a second. That's much better. All right, so let's move on. And as I was saying, let's just keep all this Dead Air Live dead, or Dead Air Live live, whatever you want to do it, whichever you want to do it. We're going to go to a tape that I did, I don't know, maybe about 5,000 years ago. I don't remember, something like that. It's called El Día de los Muertos de los Niños, meaning the Day of the Dead of the Kids. And this is on the cemeteries of Mexico, far away. So I shot that when I was young. And it's no very scary, but you can judge if you want. So cheers to you, dead people.
kurapir punsumet malesida siumsan iret hingwana lastim inya kanoskan inya kucipin sitaya Pacis, tutte curapir consumet malesida, sium sanguinet himwana. Katut sakat iret panas, kainya gurit Ucit min sitaria
Good. It is a very singular thing. Very singular. That thing about ghosts. Everybody is always asking whether anybody has seen a ghost. I have. Oh, I know what you're saying. What, you Brisbane, a man of your intelligence. I will tell you. I'm an old traveler, and as I have opportunity to cross the Atlantic very often, I have my favorites. I have a habit of waiting for certain ships when I'm obliged to cross that duck pond. You may call it a prejudice. I've never been cheated out of a good voyage, save once in my life. I remember it well. It was a warm day in June. The ship was the Kamchatka. The Kamchatka was one of my favorites. Now I say was because she emphatically no longer is. I can think of no inducement that would entice me to take another voyage in her again. I know what you're saying. She has many advantages. I'll never sail in her again. I digress. I got on board that first day. I walked about the deck. I came across the ship's doctor, already out getting his first whiff of the morning air. He's a tremendous young fellow from the west of Ireland, already inclined to be stout. He had a happy-go-lucky attitude about him. Fine morning, I said, by way of introduction. Well, sir, it's a fine morning, and it's not so fine a morning. I don't really think it's much of a morning. Yes, well, it's not so very fine, said I. If you don't mind me asking you, sir, whereabouts are you? 105, I told the doctor. He started visibly and stared at me. Something wrong, doctor? Sir, it's just that passengers have complained about that cabin on the last 3 trips. I'll tell you what, sir, I don't know you from Adam, but I got me a good-sized place up in here. Come and take your things. Share my cabin with me for the rest of the voyage. Look, I don't want to prejudice you and I don't want to frighten you, but I'd as soon see you overboard, sir, as know that you or any other man slept another night in 105. Good gracious, why, doctor, I asked. Only because the last 3 men, sir, that have slept in that cabin actually have gone overboard. This intelligence was remarkable and exceedingly unpleasant, I must confess. I looked hard at the doctor to see if he was making some sort of game of me, but the man seemed perfectly serious. I thanked him warmly for his offer, and I assured him I would be the exception to the rule whereby everyone who slept in 105 went overboard. I went to bed late that evening. I will confess to you now, I felt a disagreeable sensation upon entering my stateroom. It was as if... I can't really explain it. I was staying in the lower berth. I pulled back the curtains to the upper berth to see inside it. No one was there. I then turned to bolt the door of the stateroom when I noticed The porthole in my cabin was standing open and fastened back. This is against the regulations. I went in search of the steward of my passage. I dragged him, I remember when I found him, and I pushed him in towards the open portal. What the deuce do you mean, you scoundrel, leaving that port open every night? Don't you know it's against the regulations? If the ship heeled and the water came in, 10 men could not close that port. The porter turned pale and he fumbled with the glass plate. Now see here, sir. Ain't no one on board the ship can keep this here port closed at night. Nobody. Now you can try it yourself, sir. Now look, I ain't gonna travel on this ship no more, sir. I ain't. But I'll wager my reputation as an A1 steward that within not 2 hours, that port will be standing open again, sir. And fastened back. See, that's the thing I can't understand, sir. Fastened back. I examined the portal and the great screw and the loop nut that ran upon it. That port is open again during the night, Robert. I will give you a sovereign. It's not possible. Of course, I thought Robert was trying to account for his negligence with a silly story designed to frighten me. I disbelieved him. The result was that Robert would get his sovereign. I would spend a particularly unpleasant night. I had not been in bed long, and I was just dozing off to sleep when I was roused by a draft of cold sea air, by distinctly feeling ocean mist upon my face. I started to my feet without taking into account the motion of the vessel, and I was thrown violently across the stateroom, and right in front of me the portal was standing open again and fastened back, a thing so unaccountable that I remember feeling astonishment rather than fear upon discovering it. I closed it down quickly and tightened it down as hard as I could. I reflected Robert had not closed it an hour ago in my presence. I stood there to see if it would open again. Then I heard behind me something moving. I moved across the cabin and I saw the curtains to the upper berth were pulled close together. I then heard a low, faint groan. I sprang across the stateroom and pulled back the curtains to the upper berth to see if someone was there. There was someone. From behind the curtains came a gust of wind that smelled horribly of stagnant seawater. I reached my hand inside to see. I laid hold of something that had the shape of a man's arm, only it was smooth and wet and icy cold. And then it rolled towards me, a clammy, oozy mass. It sprang violently against me, and in an instant the door, which had once been bolted open, and the thing rushed out. My friends, I had not the time to be frightened. I immediately regained my senses and gave chase at the top of my speed, but it was too late. I saw it moving, a dark shadow through the passage. Then it vanished. I was left alone. My hair stood on end. Cold perspiration rolled down my face. I'm not afraid to say it, my friends. I was very badly frightened. But still I doubted my senses. I went in search of the captain and I told him of my tale. He looked at me for a long while. I'll tell you what I'll do, sir. I shall share your watch with you myself. It's my feeling between the two of us we can get to the bottom of this. We went back to my cabin and we bolted the door and sat there for a long while. Suddenly, we heard something. A metal sound. In the darkness, I could have swore that the brass loop of the port was turning on the great screw. Though turning so slowly, it seemed not to turn at all. The captain, seeing where I looked as well. "It moves!" cried the captain. I got up and I tested it. It was certainly loosened, for I could turn it with my hand. Suddenly, it began to turn again on its own. The captain and I struggled with the brass loop. I grabbed my heavy walking stick and I thrust it through the loop on the side of the brass. And we both bore down on it with all of our might until finally the wood snapped under the pressure. When I got to my feet, the captain stood with his back to the door. "There is something in that berth," he cried. My friends, it was horrible, ghostly beyond words. It had the shape of a man who had been long drowned, only it moved. Its dead white eyes stared at me out of the dusk. All around the cabin hung the stagnant smell of ocean water. Its foul, black, shiny hair hung about its face in clumps. It shambled towards us. It sprang itself upon me and wrapped a tentacle-like appendage about my neck and forced me to the ground until finally, crying out, I fell. The captain wrestled with the creature until finally he too fell to his face with a supernatural cry of fear. Then the thing paused and hovered over the captain's prostrate body. And those dead white eyes stared at me. I could have cried out in terror, but I had not the breath. And then, in an instant, it vanished. And it seemed, my friends, to my disturbed senses, that it did so through that open portal. Though from the size of the aperture, I cannot tell you to this day how that could have been possible. I tried to move, and I knew immediately my arm was broken. Small bone by the wrist. With my good arm, I tried to wake the captain, but the poor man was dead. They carried out the captain's body in the morning. The carpenter of the ship carried out a plan of running half a dozen 4-inch screws through the door of 105. The steward never sailed on that ship again, and I'll never sail on her either. I was very badly frightened. It's a thing I do not like. Well, that's my story. It's how I saw a ghost. If it was a ghost. It was dead anyhow. So my friends, in your travels you may have chance to book passage on a ship called the Kamchatka. And after hearing my tale this evening, you may ask to stay in stateroom number 105. You will be told it is occupied. It is occupied.
Welcome to our haunted pathway. We are currently putting everything up, including tops. Hopefully the weather will cooperate, and tomorrow we'll be able to get all the decorations and all the scary props that we put up. It's going to be a good night. It's got a lot of work ahead of us.
The whole sole purpose is to scare the daylights out of small children and adults.
You better
Ring around the rosy, a pocket full of posies. Ashes, ashes, we all fall down.
Oh my God!
You're going first.
Oh, this is unbelievable.
This is crazy. Oh wow, that's awesome.
What's in it?
Like,
Oh my God, this is so unbelievable.
I don't want to get sprayed.
Oh!
Shake your hand, but somebody ate it.
Oh my God, look at this spooky character.
It doesn't taste bad, though.
I like this. Hold on.
Not bad. Come on, you. Come on through.
It got a bit rusty from that last
Oh my
one.
goodness. Oh my goodness, look at these faces. This is great.
Look at on my website.
Oh, look at this. Oh my God.
Scared part, that's his real face.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Get out of the way!
I never got over an
Oh my
American werewolf
goodness.
in London.
I think they're having a wonderful time. Don't you think, Maggie?
Oh my gosh, you hung on to this too.
It's
Oh my goodness. This is. Oh! 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 Is that a real person? Oh. Oh my God, this is crazy. This is, I'm telling you, this is great. Oh my God, look at you. Is that you, Gus?
It's the Joker.
It's, oh my God, this is fantastic. Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh, oh my goodness.
Unbelievable. Okay, don't
Oh.
wait, I don't want to drop my phone down here. No, I don't want you.
There's a hand that might grab you over there.
I know. Oh! Oh my goodness!
No, she has one, Chloe. That's okay.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Happy Halloween. Happy late Halloween.
It was done very well. It was very scary.
Bye. Thanks for coming.
So what do you love about your monster?
I have my flashlight on my phone.
In his eyes.
I love her decomposed flesh. Shit, it just falls off the bone.
Lickety.
It's got a nice scent to it, too. Especially the green part.
I love the music.
All right, thank you. Famous composer. Name is... Be Gone.
We do have a tray of candy for the kids and Xanax for the adults to take one. Some of the adults really freak out. So, but it's fun. It's fun. That's what we try. We scare because we care.
Coming live to you, this is Terry from the Haunted Pathway.
My name is Count Bobula.
Hey, I'm Dr. Gus.
Helping out the local haunted house.
My name's Cameron.
Hi, I'm Allie.
My name is Brett.
Ring around the rosy, a pocket full of posies. Ashes, ashes, we all fall down.
Hi, us aliens have just come down for our favorite holiday. Nobody knows who we are when we're here. It's really quite wonderful. But we were talking to our favorite friend, Coho. Coho! Coho! Hi, Coho. Coho was telling us a story. And it was a great story, Coho. So we're going to share that story with everybody, okay? The Pirates of Pancake Island. So let's see the story. Because, you guys can't understand fish. So we have to watch a story he told us. So, I know it's so much fun to come down on Halloween. It's our special little... Was the spaceship ride too long today? I hope it wasn't too long. We just hop around and Go-Ho, I think you're going to have to tell us another story. We're going to have a second story by Go-Ho. But we come down every year. And the trick-or-treaters high-five us. We give hugs out at Halloween, too. We have people that come back every year special to see the aliens at my house. Yeah. We have one house that we go to all the time. We're always there. And we had 253 kids for Halloween this year. Our record would be 289. And I think we're ready to find Pancake Island.
Hello, I'm Mitt Romney. Now, you may find this hard to believe, but you understand that I've been through a lot of changes recently, and in fact, I've sort of become the avatar of change. If you can't remember what I look like, though, I brought my little Etch-a-Sketch here. I can show it to you. Oh, oops! Oh dear. Well, I'm sorry. It's all gone. And you know, my plan for how to reform the economy was on here too. Oh, this is big trouble. Well, anyway, I've come tonight because, you know, as Republicans, we've been working very hard to get out the vote, to make sure everyone who's eligible to vote can get out there. And so the BBC produced a little documentary about the efforts we've been making. And we're going to show it to you right now. And that's all the time I have for you 47%ers, so I'm leaving.
After months of an incredibly boring campaign, the quadrennial election ritual dawned today to see American voters making their way to the polls. Although the turnout was expected to be lower than usual, a steady trickle of inanimate faithfuls made their way to the local polling stations. Reporters and other political pundits were dumbfounded by the enthusiastic display by voters, who showed what can only be described as a motorized instinct to build a bridge to the 21st century. In a campaign devoid of the abortion issue, members of the religious right did not know which way to turn. Others were enthusiastic, the complexion of the election seen in their faces, reflecting the gruesome, grisly effects of deadly debates, ineffectual promises, and innuendos devoid of significance. Angered by the ever-descending standard of living and sensing the urgency of the situation, many of the voters saw the election as a window of opportunity and clamoured to get in and cast their ballots. Ghosts of the past elections notwithstanding, candidates arriving at the polls to cast their ballots were mobbed by enthusiastic supporters. Totally mesmerised by the daunting decision ahead of them, voters did not know whether they were coming or going. Even beer-drinking football fans got out of their barren and somewhat sterile couches to participate in today's events. With a confusion not seen before, many were hypnotised by the bland vacuity of the candidates and the lack of biting issues. Even the low-spirited pulled themselves out of the dumps with a staggering and morbid curiosity to vote to continue the governmental fast. Griselda Batten, BBC, from Little Known Rock, USA.
Okay, we're back. That was a special.
For the most wild narrative which I'm
continuing
about
here
to
with our
tell you, I
coverage,
neither
election night
expect
coverage.
nor solicit your belief. My immediate purpose is to place before you plainly, as succinctly, and without comment, a series of mere household events. From my infancy I was noted for the kindness and docility of my disposition. My tenderness of heart was even so conspicuous as to make me the jest of my companions. I was especially fond of animals, and I was indulged by my parents with a great variety of pets. With these I spent the chief amount of my time, and I was never so happy as when caressing them and feeding them. I married early, and in my wife I was happy to find a disposition not uncongenial with my own. Upon seeing my fondness for domestic pets, she set about immediately procuring a great variety of them. We had rabbits, goldfish, a small dog, and a cat. The last of these was a remarkably large and beautiful animal, entirely black and sagacious to an astonishing degree. Pluto, for that was the cat's name. Pluto was my favorite pet. I alone fed him, and he followed me wherever I went about the house. It was even with great difficulty that I could prevent him from following me into the streets. Our friendship continued in this manner for several years until, well, I blush to confess it now, but my general temperament underwent a radical alteration for the worse. I grew day by day more moody, more irritable, more regardless of the feelings of others. Of course, my pets were made to feel this radical alteration in my temperament, and at length even Pluto, who had now grown old and consequently somewhat peevish, even Pluto began to feel the effects of my distemper. One night, when I returned half intoxicated from one of my vile haunts about town, I perceived that the cat avoided my presence. I seized him, and in a fit of fright at my violence, he inflicted a slight wound upon my hand with his teeth. The fury of a demon possessed me. I knew my original self no longer. My original soul seemed at once to take its flight from my body, and in its place came a half-malevolent spirit, gin-nurtured. It thrilled every fibre of my frame. I seized the cat and opened from my waistcoat pocket a penknife, and I cut one of its eyes from the socket. When reason returned with the morning and I had slept off the night's debauch, I felt a feeling half of remorse, half of horror. The cat, however, seemed to recover. He went about the house as usual, and only, as might be expected, he would flee in terror at my approach. Now I had so much of my old heart left as to at first be grieved at this evident dislike by this creature that had once so loved me. But this feeling soon gave way to irritation, and then, as if to my final overthrow, came perverseness. It is this spirit of perverseness which philosophy makes no account of, but I am not so sure that my soul lives as I am, that perverseness is one of the primitive impulses of the human heart. One morning, in cool blood, I slipped a noose about the animal's neck, and I hung it to the limb of a tree. I hung it with tears in my eyes. Hung it with the bitterest of remorse, for I knew that it had loved me, and I knew that it had given me no cause for offense. On the evening of the day this deed was done, I was awakened from sleep by the loud cry of fire. My bed curtains were all in flames. The house was all ablaze. It was with great difficulty that my wife, a servant, and I were able to escape from the conflagration. The destruction was complete. My entire worldly wealth was swallowed up. I resigned myself thenceforward to despair. Now I'm above the weakness of trying to establish a cause of chain and effect between that atrocity with the cat and the disaster of the fire, but I am here to establish a chain of facts for you, and I wish to leave no link imperfect. Now, on the day succeeding the fire, I visited the ruins of the house. Only one wall stood. This wall was to be found about the center of the house, against which had rested the head of my bed. About this wall a dense crowd were collected. The words singular and remarkable and other similar expressions excited my curiosity. I approached the wall, and I saw engraved on the white plaster, as if in bas relief, the gigantic image of a cat. The illustration was done with remarkable accuracy. The animal had a rope about its neck. I accounted to my reason for this portraiture, but nevertheless it made a deep impression upon my fancy. For months I could not rid myself of the phantasm of that cat. I began to feel a spirit of regret. Began to mourn the loss of Pluto, and I found myself looking for a pet of a similar species about the vile places I frequented. Looking for a pet perhaps to replace him. One night, as I sat in a den of more than infamy, I noticed upon one of the tops of the immense hogsheads of gin or rum a dark object laying upon. I approached it and I touched it with my hand. It was a black cat, a fully large one, fully as large as Pluto, and like him in every respect except one. You see, Pluto had not had a hair of white upon his entire body, but this cat had a large, though indefinite, splotch of white upon the entire region of the breast. I touched it. It arose and purred loudly and rubbed itself against my hand, seemingly delighted with my touch. This, then, was the animal I had been in search of. I immediately set about to procure it of the landlord, but the man made no claim to it. I continued my caresses and made ready to make my departure, and the animal evinced a disposition to follow me home. I allowed it to do so, occasionally stooping to pet it as we went. When it arrived at home, it domesticated itself immediately. Became a great favorite of my wife. For my part, though, I found a dislike for the animal arising within me. This dislike probably had something to do with the discovery upon the morning after bringing it home that, like Pluto, it too had been deprived of one of its eyes, a characteristic which only endeared it further to my wife. My dislike for this animal, however, my aversion to it, was met by an increased partiality of the beast to me. It followed my footsteps throughout the house with a pertinacity. Whenever I would sit, it would crouch beneath my chair or spring up on my knees and cover me with its loathsome caresses. Or if I stood up to walk, it would scramble between my feet and nearly throw me headlong, or, fastening its sharp claws into my clothing, would clamber to my breast in that fashion. It was at times like this that I longed to destroy it with a blow, but I yet withheld my hand, partially out of a remembrance of my former deed of cruelty, but chiefly out of a dread of this new animal. For you see, my wife had called my attention more than once to the character of white upon the animal's chest. It had gained the rigorous distinction of outline. It was now something I dread to name. And for this I dreaded, loathed, and would have destroyed that creature had I dared. Upon its chest was now the image, a horrible thing. It was the image of the gallows and the hangman's noose. And now I was wretched beyond the wretchedness of mere humanity. Neither by day nor by night knew I the blessings of rest any more. For by day the animal left me no moment alone, and by night I would start awake from dreams of unutterable fear, only to feel its hot breath upon my face, and its weight like an incarnate nightmare ever incumbent upon my chest. Evil thoughts became my sole intimates, the darkest and most evil of thoughts. One day my wife accompanied me into the cellar of the old building our poverty now compelled us to inhabit. The cat, of course, followed us down the stairs, and weaving between my legs nearly threw me headlong, nearly dashed my head against the pavement. Uplifting an axe, I aimed a blow at the creature which, had it landed as I wished, would surely have proven fatal, but this blow was arrested by the hand of my wife. I withdrew the axe from her grasp, and I buried it in her brain. I don't want you to worry about me. I set about immediately with great deliberation upon the task of concealing the body. A great many projects entered into my head, and finally I hit upon one that was the most expedient. I would wall it up in the cellar, as the monks of the Middle Ages had done with their victims. For this the house was well adapted. The walls of the cellar were loosely constructed and had recently been spread throughout with a loose plaster which the dampness had prevented from hardening. I was able with a crowbar to loosen the bricks very easily. I then took the corpse of my wife and placed it against the inner wall, and I was able to relay the bricks just as they stood. Upon finishing, I looked upon my work with great satisfaction. The wall gave no appearance of having been disturbed. And now I would set about to destroy the creature that had caused all this wretchedness. I set about the house looking for him, and finally I came to find an open window. The crafty animal, upon seeing my fit of violence, had made his escape. I cannot tell you how angry I was, but this feeling soon gave way, and I felt relief at the absence of the creature. And what is more, it did not return again during the night, and I slept. For the first time since it had entered my house, I slept. And it was good, too, for the next day I had to report my wife missing to the police. They did due diligence, though. They searched the house from top to bottom, and they found nothing. The best part is the cat did not return again for the second and third night, and I began to breathe easily as a free man. On the fourth day, a party of the police arrived quite unexpectedly and entered the house. They made a thorough search of the premises from top to bottom again. They bade me accompany them in their search. We went to the basement, and they searched and found everything satisfactory. I longed to say some word as if in triumph, and as they mounted the stairs to leave, I called out, "By the by, gentlemen, I'm glad to have allayed your suspicions. This is a well-constructed house." I do not believe I know what I said at all. Very well-constructed house, and I rapped a cane on the plaster behind which sat the corpse of my wife, and no sooner had I done this than I was answered by a voice from within the tomb, crying out soft at first, but then swelling loudly. I staggered against the opposite wall, and then a dozen arms of the police tore bodily at the bricks, and there stood the corpse of my wife, gore-clotted, and upon her head, with a red mouth outstretched and a solitary eye of fire, sat the demon that had seduced me to murder. And now, whose informing voice consigned me to the gallows. Oh, dear God, I had walled up the monster in the tomb. And now, I live only to tell you the tale. From here in my cell, alone, in my ears, the voice of that horrid creature that now lives me no moment alone.